Hey out there, survivors, how are you all doing? And welcome back to another episode of Let's Survive Interviews. We are right back into the Outlaw sessions. It's been a while, actually. I say right back, but it's actually been a while. But you know what? I'm okay with that, because some things are worth the wait, people. And today, we are dealing with the man with the plan, literally. That's right, folks. Today we are talking to Benjamin Byron Davis, an actor, phenomenal actor who played Dutch Van Der Linde in Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, and also Nastas.
Yeah, Nastas indeed. That was not everybody. I don't know if I get asked about that, but yeah, Nastas, which was not. That was unexpected. But Paddy, thank you so much for having me, and it's a delight to be here. And I'm sure we'll get into Nastas. I don't know that would fly these days, and I think that the truth of that character and that performance was that it was because of the virtue of my size. Nastas was 6.5 feet tall, so they hired me. While I was playing Dutch, they had me also play Nastas.
Nastas, yeah.
And my understanding was that it was that any of the work that I did in that role was going to be
dubbed over.
It wasn't going to be used. Yeah, they were going to hire somebody to do it. But so I was doing the best, and as I tried the most dignified as I could in that performance, just for the benefit of the other actors in the scenes, because they were great scenes. I mean, and he was a lovely character. I enjoyed. I think the issue of representation is more front of mind now than it was a decade ago, and that's entirely a good thing. So but I never considered that work was ever going to make it to the game. And then I guess they just the producers ended up liking the performance that I delivered, and they didn't want to replace it. So that worked out okay for me.
I mean, just to quickly touch on it, because there's loads to get into here, but to touch on the Nastas thing, I do agree that if you look at the jump from Red Dead 1 to Red Dead 2, even in terms of representation, it's phenomenal. But at the same time, the one thing I really appreciate about Nastas is that if you look at it compared to a lot of stuff that maybe came before it, they were very heightened, exaggerated native characters, whereas Nastas, I actually I was playing it again today and I got to that scene, Nastas is handled in a very, even when Harold McDougal, Joe Ackman's character, is kind of talking to him slowly and he just speaks back and he's like, actually, I grew up, he's totally, that's actually really refreshing, even though, as you say, we are moving to a point where it's not just about having it be dignified, but which is super important as well. We are now moving into in terms of casting, making sure that it's the person's actual culture and stuff. But look, it's a decade ago now, and on top of that, as I say, it is a dignified role. It's not treated as a stereotype or a parody, not like Irish,
Oh yeah. Well, I don't want to comment on someone else's work, but I do know. I had the great pleasure of working with some magnificent Irish actors. A lot of them, in fact. Roger and Mick and Penny. Penny O'Brien as Molly. Just a magnificent group of Irish folks.
I mean, I will say, the thing is, right, I joke, Irish people, if anything, we have a whole holiday, which just passed, which is based around celebrating our stereotypes. So, we're very comfortable with that stuff. I think we're a very thick-skinned nation. So, when I played Red Dead 1, I never thought with Irish as a character or anything that he was a ridiculous. I just kind of was like, this character's funny,
I don't know if everyone had that patience with him, but I certainly, I did not know enough. What I've come to learn about Ireland through folks that I've worked with, and then their friends. One is don't try to outdrink an Irishman. I've had many regrettable mornings after when I've attempted it, but I do okay.
I'd say you hold your own, yeah.
But also a thing that I didn't know that, of course, seems, because I grew up in Boston, and there's a large Irish population that had a very tough go at the beginning, and then ended up, doing quite well. we had a president out of Brookline, John Kennedy. But what I didn't know that I learned, I think, within the last couple of years is that there's more Irish people living outside of Ireland than within Ireland.
Yeah, our diaspora, it's a massive thing, like the amount of immigration from this country. It is almost as much a part of our culture as the culture of the country itself is the fact that so many people emigrate from the country.
It's kind of, it's remarkable. I think it's remarkable. But it's one of the virtues of living in a country that is a country built by immigrants. I've got my family is my mom's father was first generation from Russia, and her mother's first generation from Sicily. That's a hell of a pairing.
Melting pot.
But it is, it's one of the things that one of the great strengths, I think, of this country, which is sometimes hard to see.
I agree. I had my first trip ever to the US last January. I'm actually wearing the T-shirt from the theater where we screened in Kansas City. It was my first time ever in the US. And what I'll say is, like, Ireland it's nowhere near as diverse. In terms of everything, in terms of people, in terms of food, in terms of just general, like, you can go into 3 bars on the same street and there's entirely different atmospheres, clientele, everything. And I kind of fell in love with it, like, to the point that I during everything that's been going on with the pandemic and stuff, I've been kind of saying, like, nudging my wife, going like, what would you think? Like, would you be interested in going over? And she's kind of like, no, our kids have roots.
Well, but you can always visit, man.
Exactly.
Well, once we get back to normal.
That's my plan. I'm working out. I've got a plan, Ben, which is...
Be careful with those. Be careful.
You only get one, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm intending on, once this is all passed, I'm intending on, like, flying to New York, getting a car, and, like, driving cross country, visiting loads of my friends out to LA.
I've done that. Driving across this country is pretty amazing, and you do get an appreciation. It's bigger than you think, and it is. There are great people to be found all across. But when I moved from New York to LA, me and a buddy from Chicago, we got in a big Penske truck and drove from New York through. We took 90, so we went through Indiana and Illinois and Chicago and stayed north all the way through South Dakota to see the Badlands, which are extraordinary.
Oh, nice.
And then I don't think I really had to twist his arm, but I didn't want to get that close to Wyoming without seeing Devil's Tower from, Close Encounters. So we drove up to see that volcanic plug, and then down through the Colorado Rockies and past going over the Hoover Dam. And man.
Oh my God!
From sea to shining sea. I love this. I love this land of ours.
I feel like this is a perfect way to segue into talking a little bit about this character that you played in Red Dead. This man, this myth, this legend. That, like, everything you're even saying now, like, you're creating you're inspiring me to want to travel across America. Like, I already did, but now it's like, I've been. That's the thing about Dutch as a character, is what fascinates me about him. Is that, like, I don't want to put this as too much of a front-loaded question, but, like, Dutch is the kind of character who I feel like, especially in Red Dead 2, I would do anything for. And that's everyone in the gang, I feel, at some point feels that for Dutch. They feel this absolute devoted loyalty. But one of the things that I find fascinating about Dutch as a character is... I kind of idolize him and put him on a pedestal, and I think he has a good heart, but he does some truly deplorable things, which, to be fair, are there any characters in this game that don't? But yeah. But the character of Dutch is so complex, like, that as an actor, what was it like for you to take on a role like that?
Daunting. It will remain forever just my good fortune that I got the part in the first place. When we were getting to work on the second one, I was still figuring. I knew where he had to get to, but I didn't really know where he started. So there's kind of, there were, like I for example, I found out he was a Yankee, which I didn't know through the entire first game. That was kind of good information to have. But it was a learning experience. So I basically came in knowing, okay, well, the gang, this is the gang. This is what the first game was about. And what do we owe? What we owe is the cheese is going to have to slide off the cracker, and the gang is going to have to fall apart. And that's about it. And then the other beautiful thing that I knew, which was that I'm not going to die in this game, because I know what the virtue of a prequel is. You're going to make it. But so then it started to be, and it was a central question. I think not just for me in the playing of it, but I think also for the amazing writers that we had, was the nature of the guy. And there was over the years, there was some, I wouldn't say tension, but there was some push and pull between, are these people following him because he wields, because they're afraid? Like, is he exerting control over this gang in a manner that they're there because they don't have any other place to go? And I think in a large part many of them are there because they don't have any other place to go. But I felt rather strongly, and as did others, that the charisma was going to have to be the thing that he had. They weren't following him because they were afraid to cross him, though surely they were afraid to cross him. But I don't know that they wanted to cross him. I certainly hope. Now, I can't speak to the motivations of any of the characters in the game, but I can just say that there was figuring out the dynamics of this was a very large task, and a lot of very, very, very smart artists worked really, really hard to make it as credible as we could. And I just, so to get to be in a position where you're playing a role that you love, and you're surrounded by the talented cast, many of whom you've already met, but also this extraordinary company that is populated with the cream of the crop of writers and animators and artists and technicians and,
and Rod Edge.
and Rod, who, Rod Edge is, I would crawl through glass to work with him anytime he asked. The relationship that we forged together, the trust that we had in each other, and that was built over 2 titles. Yeah. I miss the guy almost every day because we were you're thick as thieves, but then he has to go back into his bubble of whatever the next thing is. But he's not merely an excellent director. He kind of is if not an inventor, an innovator of a certain kind of storytelling that I don't know really existed in the way that it does. I mean, his impact on not just Rockstar, but I expect, and I think he would cringe to hear me saying this because I think he's a very humble guy, but I think his impact on the industry as a whole is significant.
I can kind of speak to that from an outside perspective looking in, which is that I can tell you that in terms of storytelling, there was nothing like the camp scenes pre-Red Dead 2. Like, the camp scenes were a whole new thing, and I didn't appreciate them at first, if I'm being totally honest. Like, when I first played it, I never drank in how incredible it was that you were just walking around, and it wasn't like, it didn't dawn on me that in other games, cutscenes played out and you had to stop and wait and see what happens. And in this, like, Rockstar have always kind of done that, where they'd have walk and talks where you kind of walk with characters and talk before a mission or something. But this was something new. It didn't dawn on me. So you had 20 different little stories going on at once that you could choose to participate in, or not. And it was up to you, the player. And I think you're right. I think that this game and you know, Rod and everybody at Rockstar contributed to creating something that we'd never seen before, and now I think is more not common in video games. I still think a lot of stuff doesn't necessarily do it, but I think it will be common. I think it is something that people will try to emulate.
Try. Good luck. I love the point you make about the fact that you took it for granted. That it didn't really dawn on you how crazy it is that you can do this. And that's kind of, you know, that's probably the highest compliment you could give. You know, you talk to a director of photography and you tell him, oh my God, that shot, that tracking shot was amazing. A good DP is going to say, shit, if you're watching the shot, it's not a good shot.
Yes.
So the fact that your immersion was front and center and you weren't kicking the tires of how'd they pull this off? Yeah. That to me that's phenomenal. That's ideal. And I do think that and I think it's true of, you know, and I don't want to dunk on any other title for any, you know, any game that gets made is a Herculean effort.
Yes.
no one sets out to do anything less than the best that they can do, and I don't care. You know, maybe there's companies that I don't know that try to make shitty games. I don't think. But I mean, I do think that the sometimes with Rockstar games, it's in going back to another title that isn't a Rockstar game that reminds you, Jesus, like why? You know, I got out of the car. Speaking of cars, you may hear Hollywood going by, but you get out of a car in GTA 5 and you hear the little ticks of the motor as it's cooling off at the end. Who the hell?
And each of the motors sounds different. Like this is the insanity of GTA. Like each engine has been specifically, the sound design is different for every engine recorded off of real cars, and you're like, this is insane.
It requires artists who are thinking that hard, but it also requires a production house that is dedicated to enabling those artists to execute that. And that is, I can't say enough. I'm very proud to be associated with that company and the work that they do. Their ambitions are outsized, and they seem to continue to meet them. And it's stunning.
It absolutely is. And it's funny, I had a question that I was going to ask a little bit later, but I think it's a good place to kind of slip it in now, is like this Red Dead and Red Dead 2 were not your only outings with Rockstar, because you were also in you also did voices in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and you appeared in Noire as well.
I don't know that you can find me in Noire. I did, I think, 2 days work, and it was very odd work because you show up and you're wearing an orange. I was just a head, right? I didn't do performance capture.
Yeah,
I was just a head in a room, and they put you in this room. You're surrounded in 360 degrees by cameras. I think you go and you get the 1940s hairdo, and they have to slick it down because light couldn't get through it. So the hair and makeup on that thing was like for a feature film. Yeah. And then you go and you sit in this booth, but then once you're in the booth, you can't occlude, which is block any of those cameras. So if your body starts moving into it, which is part of what an actor does, they have to start the takeover again. And so then you're just sitting there and you're looking straight ahead. Cameras are all around you, and the lines are coming up. You can't have a script in your hand, and they didn't give you the script ahead of time. At least not the guy. I mean, I was playing a mechanic named Paul, but and it was I did one interrogation scene where they're, okay, do that like you're lying, now do it like you're telling the truth. I'm almost like, this is not my kind of direction right here. This is, and then, I think, I don't know that he survived. I do remember when I played it, and I love that game.
It's a really good game.
I think it's flawed. Yeah. I think the city seems emptier than a lot of cities that they've made. But I do remember you can find, there is one mission where you can find the mechanic that I played under a car, working on a car. And I think if you go to the real far corner of the garage and you squat, you can sort of see my profile, but that's it. I mean, it's not. I don't think that I'm really in the game. I think whatever the fight that I shot, I don't think it got used.
I do just love it though that you've had this. I mean, the question I was kind of getting at was like, I think you kind of already answered this when you talked about it. So I mean, I was going to ask like, how special is your relationship with Rockstar? But it sounds to me like it's everything.
Well, but it's with the exception of Red Dead, the two titles, I certainly don't think they were aware that I had done San Andreas when I came to audition for Red Dead. And then after Red Dead, when I went in to work on L.A. Noire, it's not like anybody there knew that I was Dutch Van Der Linde from Red Dead. It was also a thing. There's a thing. One of the things that I was very excited about, knowing I was coming back for the prequel, was, well, there's a thing that happens to you when you're a working actor but not a well-known actor, and somebody asks, like when I would be at a hotel to work on Dutch, and you're down at the hotel bar, you don't know anybody, you're just eating dinner by yourself, you strike up conversation. Inevitably, what do you do? And if you're not, like, sometimes I'm not in the mood and I'll just say contractor, but sometimes it's a nice back and forth and you'll say actor. As soon as you say actor, it's like, oh, what do you do? What do you do?
What have you been in?
Yeah. What's your resume?
Anything I'd know. That's the one I always get about directing. Anything I'd know?
But the next thing that happens, Paddy, is they go, no, come on, just tell me something. So you're like, 6 Feet Under. No, never saw it. This, that, or the other. No, never saw it. This, that, or the other. No, never saw that. This. Oh my God, that's my favorite show. I've seen every episode. Who were you on that show? I was this guy. No, don't remember that. It's like, if I meet a podiatrist, am I going to ask them, you worked on any feet I might be familiar with? It doesn't. So that's a thing that gets old. I'm gonna get my wife in a little bit of trouble here for the fun of it, actually. So earlier I said, like, oh, I'm really excited. I'm gonna be chatting to Ben from Red Dead. He's one of my favorite characters and all this. And my wife, and I said, like, and I was looking at his IMDb, and he's been in like a lot of the shows that we love. I was like, he's in Desperate Housewives, he's in Chuck, he's in, I went through the list, 6 Feet Under. We got, our wedding music was the 6 Feet Under theme, which I don't know what that says about our marriage, but. You've been going pretty strong, huh? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while indeed. But and she said, oh, who was he in Desperate Housewives? And I said, well, one second, I looked it up, and I said, he was the ex-con in this episode, and whatever they said the name, the something riot. And Kathy was like, no, I don't remember. And then I showed her a picture of you, and we scrolled through the pictures, and she was like, yeah, no, I got him. It's sometimes people can't place it even just on the name of the character. They have to see like a moment, and then they go, I remember that, because she literally just rewatched Desperate Housewives, because we got Star on Disney Plus, which is basically like Hulu in Ireland. We never had Hulu, so we finally have the equivalent of Hulu here. So my wife was like, oh, I'm going to binge every episode of Desperate Housewives again. So it was fresh in her mind.
That was a ton of fun, and I was particularly skinny, so I'm happy that's on camera. But that was, I worked with John Schneider, who, growing up with the Dukes of Hazzard. And it was funny because it was the second time I'd worked with him, because I did a pilot that he was in. He's a very, very nice guy. And then I was with Marcia Cross, who did not talk to me the whole day on set. And at the end of the day, she came up to me and she said, it was really very gracious, but she came up to me and she said, I didn't mean to be cold all day, but I could tell you were a good guy, and I just wanted to stay scared of you. So you did great work, and yada, yada, yada. But it was notable for that, but it was also notable for when I was a kid. I grew up in Boston, and when I was a kid and I thought of California, I thought of Universal Studios, and Universal Studios Hollywood in particular. Because when you're growing up and you're watching sitcoms, every sitcom eventually the gang goes on a trip to California. And you're like, oh my God, the Happy Days gang is going to California? You don't realize that they've shot every episode in California, right? They've never been to Ohio or wherever it's set, but now they're coming to California. But you'd always see Universal Studios. And I'd auditioned a bunch of times on Universal Studios, and of all the lots, it's kind of like the Psycho House is there, and the back courthouse is there, and right next to like one of the casting offices. So anytime I get on the lot, I'd go. But I never worked at Universal, and it was sort of, I wanted that feather in my cap, and that the first gig I got at Universal was that one, was Desperate Housewives, and that was a real. So that was a milestone for me. That little thing.
I love hearing these kind of stories because, like, again, like, I think, for me, I kind of approach these things a little bit differently because I'm obsessed with filmmaking, creative, storytelling, actually, to be blunt about it, like storytelling in general, but process as well, actor process, and what actors go through. I've even in the past done a little bit of acting myself because I feel like as a director, you should get in front of the camera and be directed, because you learn a lot about what works well for a director by being directed, and you'll also learn what doesn't work. So like when I hear even that story about Marcia Cross, that warmed my heart because I love that idea of the process. She's staying in character and being afraid of you until she's Marcia Cross again, and then she's able to come up and give you that, like, your accolades and tell you how good you are. I've gotten to work with some really spectacular folks over the years, and the one thing that is sort of true of all of them, and this sort of goes to what we were talking about before we started taping, but you meet on your way up, sort of in the middle levels, you can meet a lot of really sketchy folks. Yes.
Right? Yeah. Who are, but it's, in my experience, sort of the higher up you go, the sort of more grounded and the nicer people become. And it's usually just because of the work ethic that it requires to get there, I think, is probably a portion of that. But I also think at a certain point, you'll hear stories about people that are jerks, and some jerks work, but a lot of jerks don't. Because all things being equal, when it's coming down to a casting decision, and I think you could ask a lot of directors, and I think they back this up. I've got two actors, and one's been a bit of a jerk to be around, and the other has been a total pleasure. And I'm deciding who do I want to spend an 18-hour day with. I'm not going to go with the jerk. I'm going to go with the. If all other things are equal, I'm going to go with the person that I'd rather spend time with, because ultimately nobody's doing this alone.
One of the things that I have kind of heard is that, like, sometimes if it's a situation where it'll be like a massive production and the director has limited interaction with people, then they kind of maybe don't necessarily, if their producer's like, we need this guy, he's an absolute jerk, it's going to make us, he's worth such and such in the budget. Then I've heard that, but like what I find is, from my experience of being on an indie film where everybody's killing themselves to be there, everybody's exhausted, put their own money, time, effort into it, you definitely don't want to be surrounded by jerks. You want to be surrounded by your family. You want to be surrounded by people that'll lift you up every day when you want to give up.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, getting a movie made, a big one or a small one, is a minor miracle. And just like with video games, it's like nobody sets out, I hope, to make a bad one.
Yeah. best of intentions always, I think. But I mean, I think that there's. I was going to jump into something there about the gang, but what I'd like to do right now, actually, quickly, is so I obviously played these games in the order that they released. I played Red Dead Redemption in 2010. I actually have my cards that Steve sent me at the time, my Red Dead cards.
I think I have those somewhere. I have a set of those. I also have a bar of soap that I never used.
I played Red Dead when it released, and I loved it. It was one of my, like, at the time, it was one of my favorite experiences. I grew up watching westerns with my dad. My dad doesn't really like movies, but he loved westerns, so we would watch. But mainly, he loved the violent westerns. He loved the really he loved the Clint Eastwoods. Yeah, like, and he loved, you know, like Hang 'em High, High Plains Drift, or anything where Clint Eastwood would come in and kill a bunch of people.
Josie Wales. Outlaw Josie
Wales, yeah, exactly. But he also loved, I suppose, stuff like Two Mules for Sister Sarah, which is a little bit more heartfelt and like. But I had this very deep attachment to the Western genre, and I was very excited for Red Dead, and it lived up to everything I expected when I played it. But one thing that was, I mean, I think this is the same for anyone that played these games in the order, the release order. There was so much unsaid in that first game that, like, it's amazing how nobody like really suspected that we would get a prequel down the line, because when I go back and replay it now, it's like, how did we not know? Because there's so much, like, the Dutch Van Der Linde. I actually call the games A Tale of Two Dutches, because the Dutch Van Der Linde you meet in Red Dead 1 and the Dutch Van Der Linde that you meet at the very beginning of Red Dead 2 feel like two completely different people. Even to the point that the first time you meet Dutch in Red Dead 2, he is trying to lift everybody up. He's being super inspirational. They're trapped in this awful situation, and the first time you meet Dutch in Red Dead 1, he's like calling your wife a whore and shouting obscenities at you. So it's like, it feels like, and I understand it. I understand because Dutch feels like John's betrayed him. But I just love to talk to you about, like, that experience of playing that version of Dutch before getting to go back and really, I suppose, dig into the meat of the character.
Well, it's a good question. It's interesting as we were working our way through 2, when I would have downtime, where I'd come back to LA for a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months, sometimes half a year, but trying to stay at least somewhat in process, I would turn to a replay of Red Dead. And the further along we got, the more it started to seem, holy cow, there's like an Arthur-sized hole in Red Dead that is there, that I wasn't really quite. They were very, very shrewd in terms of where they left things vague and where they left things. Some people say it would be great if you could go back and add mentions of Arthur throughout the story of the first one. And maybe Javier or Bill might have mentioned him, but I don't know. I kind of understand what they did, but in terms of Dutch, I learned more about Dutch playing the game than I knew about Dutch when I played Dutch in the first one.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So what I knew about Dutch in the first one, and I had been, and it's why I kind of felt like, okay, this guy could be I didn't even know that he was going to be at the end of the game. I didn't know where in the game any of this was happening. I had no sense of any of it. I was hopeful. I was like, this seems pretty climactic. This seems like this guy is a big deal. But all I really had to go on in the first pass was he used to be the leader of a gang. He is ridiculously well read. And he's a little crazy. He's gone crazy. He's lost his mind. And that was enough to go on. And then I had this voice that did, which is not far from my own kind of voice, but that I had done for a short film that I had brought into the audition, which I think got me the part. And so that was it. So it was finding that voice and finding that guy, and that was it. And then it was just learning sort of the lessons of what performance capture was, because I didn't. Who knew what it was? Like you're wearing this sort of rig on your head with a camera on it, and motion capture I was familiar with. I knew what that was. But I've got 6 shooters on, and I'm wearing cowboy boots. And I've got it's like, okay. And then you sort of started, and Rod, it was like the first direction I kind of got from Rod, where Rod sort of talked about things that motion capture likes, right? You can talk, and in film, it's like things that a camera likes.
The camera responsibility, yeah.
Yeah, so there's things that motion capture likes, and it's a bit of sway in your movement, and not on your face, particularly in the second one. Stillness can pay off, but that was kind of the idea, was sort of that your body is big, your body is on stage, and your face is in camera. It's in a close-up. And that kind of was how I made sense of it. And then on Red Dead 2, when folks would show up that had on-camera experience but had never done performance capture, that was a real easy way to make it clear if it was a veteran actor. It was like, you're in close-up, your body's playing to the back of the house.
That's amazing, because one thing that has been consistently said by people across these Outlaw Sessions interviews, and I love hearing it, is I hear people say a lot, it's like theatre in the round, but what I'm hearing you say that I love is that idea that it is, but once you're up here, once you're the facial capture is on, you're acting for film with that. It's all subtle expression, it's all dialing it back on that's so interesting. That's wild.
It's funny, the theater in the round is a good way in. I mean, I think that's a good shorthand to understand it, but it's not quite theater in the round either, because theater in the round, you're still considering the sight lines of the audience in terms of how that theater in the round will get blocked. So if somebody's back is to half of the house, that's done, that's on purpose, and the people that are seeing that person's back, there's another actor someplace else to satisfy that part of the house.
Yes.
But if you take a scene like the top of the opening scene, with all of us and Hosea coming in and finding the I think it's a church, and the pews getting moved, and Davy's body getting brought in, and the coins being put on his eyes. And all of that entire scene, I think there's 15 or 16 of us. And I don't know that they used just one take, but they could have.
It had to be done I
think we did 7 takes maybe that were useful. And action is Curzon Hosea opening the door, and cut is Roger and Dutch exit. That's all, that whole thing in one pass. And were it theater in the round, it wouldn't play because the eye lines wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Were it done on camera, it would never be something you could do in one take.
No.
Because that setup, that scene, that many actors, that's...
You're talking about,
5 days on that scene.
And because you're talking in terms of camera. If you were to try and do that in one take, it would end up being what it is in this. You'd need literally cameras everywhere. That's the only way of potentially ever doing it.
You just couldn't. And then if you've got a cast of that caliber, and the production values as high as they are, we assume that would be shot on a soundstage. And so what you'd have wild walls. So we'd shoot. So turning camera around, it would take days. It would take days.
Oh my God.
And the thing is, having worked on stage, having worked on camera, the energy that you can get in performance capture, the energy in that scene and in many others I could point to, it's special. It's a special thing, because we get to be entirely consumed with the immediacy of the work, despite the fact that we're covered in ping pong balls and everything that we're interacting with is kind of not exactly, if it's a bottle, it's a bottle,
it's like but styrofoam
it's covered in tape, and none of it looks real. But again, if you've spent any time training or any time rehearsing plays, you know how to accept those things. And 5 years in, or I guess when we did that opening scene, I think was probably about 4 years in, right at the beginning of 4 years in, I think. So everybody at that point, and it was really important that we wait that long to do it, because at that point, folks knew they had a sense of who they were.
Yeah.
And so that was very important, I think, that we had that sense so that could be an establishing scene. Because there's other scenes, and there's some of them are still in there, where I know, I'm like, that's day one, and I can hear it. I can hear
Really?
Oh, I could. I have a very weird memory, Paddy, and it is. I can tell you every movie theater I saw a movie in.
Oh my God!
There's a lot of things. When I recall, I've got this weird recall on some things, and then very shoddy recall on very important things.
One thing I'll say that I had never considered until I spoke to Alex McKenna that blew my mind was Alex said something that and actually hearing you talk about the props there and stuff made me think is what brought this up in my mind, is Alex mentioned that like you'd be on set and it would be like, you'd have to think of things like, you'd have to be like, what's the weather like? What am I walking on? Am I walking on mud? Am I walking in snow? Am I walking on sand? What am I? And that's like, my mind was like exploding at this stuff because the director in me was just like, that is crazy. You have to literally say, it's not just like, here's your direction, here's your blocking. It's like, we have to put this in your head. Like, you have to know everything.
But you also get, I kind of, being, there's a story from the first game, which, there's another thing that's amazing about performance capture. Because so much of what you do when you're doing theater is you're conjuring, what you're looking at. You're conjuring the environment that you're in. And that last scene that Dutch has on the cliff,
yes.
When I got to see it, it was, and I had to play the game to see it. It took 28 hours to finally get to see it. But not that I'm complaining. but it's a very odd thing to see this world that you imagine rendered. But that was a lesson to me. I still have the pages from that day somewhere. I was supposed to shred them, but I have saved them. They are cherished. But there's a question on the top of the page, which is, what is his injury? Which we never quite figured out. I knew that I had an injured arm, but I didn't know what it was from. I think the instinct is it had something to do with the Gatling gun. Or
the Gatling gun, yeah.
But the question I didn't have there was, what's the temperature? Because I had assumed, in my mind, when we were playing it, I'm thinking like it's a cave that we're coming out like out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon or a Roadrunner cartoon.
Yeah,
so I'm picturing sort of Monument Valley, desert, vista, and then when I see it, it was so at odds with it's cold.
It's snowy, yeah.
But for the second game, I think I had learned, but I think Rockstar had also learned, and not only did they learn it, they made it procedural so that the temperature actually impacts the character. If your health is gonna go down quicker if you're not wearing the right clothing. So that's. But the animators were right on it with everything. It's like we knew the temperature, we knew, if there were insects or not. We knew, there was a lot to consider.
I mean, I did want to bring up that scene on the cliff, actually, funnily enough, because there was two things that aren't really questions that I did want to quickly talk about. And they're two very important statements by Dutch. And one of them is on that cliff, which is that monologue that you can't fight change, you can't fight nature.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing.
That is one of and when we hear that repeated in Red Dead 2 with Arthur and Dutch on the cliff.
You can't fight nature, Captain. You can't fight change. You can't fight gravity.
That was just, I remember getting all my hair standing up because it was like that. It was like when you watch a movie like a Star Wars or something and someone says, use the Force. You're like, that's the thing they say in the movies. That was it was Dutch's thing.
Right.
But also it created, when I saw it again, because I'm replaying it. When I saw it again, I was like, it started to create another question in my mind. This is a great thing about art. You take yourself with art and you remove yourself 10 years from it, put other stuff in with it. And now I'm like, wait, does this mean most of what Dutch said was pre-scripted statements that he had ready to go, cocked like a gun?
I've seen some contemplation about that. I do know that there is in the second game you can find his notes for a speech that he gives, and some people have pointed at that to suggest that he's disingenuous. I think that means that he's thorough and considered, but
and intelligent.
Well, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I should say just a disclaimer that's important to understand. I don't, because it is art, I don't have any ownership of the character. And also, legally speaking, I don't have any ownership. It belongs to Rockstar Games. And I like to think, more importantly, he belongs to the fans of the game. But so I would never want anyone to confuse my opinion with canon. Because the guy that plays him thinks that. He's not solely mine. I mean, the Michael Unsworth and Dan Houser and all of the writers, they did such an extraordinary job scripting him. But my thoughts on that, well, first of all, when that game came out it's a thing, it's quite hard to understand the sensation. When you're watching yourself on camera, if you're me, you're going, put on more weight, or your hairline's receding, those eyebrows are so fucking ridiculous. Where'd you get off with that dumb nose? It's like all the shit that you see. You don't get to see. All you're seeing is the things that you judge yourself about. So you don't really get to see the work. And there is this wonderful kind of thing about the distance that the performance capture puts between your ego, and your work
and your performance.
That it's a bit of it's a remarkable kind of an experience because you can actually watch the work. And now, if anybody doesn't know me or doesn't know the way that I move or has never seen me work on stage, then you might not understand how exactly that is me, right? But if you do know us, any of the actors that work in performance culture, it's unmistakable. And that scene is so beautifully. Now that scene's one take. Every scene in Red Dead Redemption is a single take, and that goes for at least every scene. No, I think every scene in the game, because it was they couldn't do. Once you had action, you had to get to cut. They could add. I think they could ADR in some lines, but you couldn't fix it. If the take wasn't good, you couldn't cut in and out of it. You can move the virtual camera, and it seems like there's cuts. Yeah, but those aren't real edits. It's still the live performance. Am I explaining that?
Yeah, no, it's still the same take. The animators are able to move the camera within that take, but it's still that take. Yeah,
but it's got to be that single take. On the second one, we could cut and cut and cut.
Freedom,
but, But so the thing for me, though, I was just. I mean, I don't know what I was very proud of my work on in that scene in particular, and it was a weird thing, even when I watch it now, because every blink that he does in that scene, that's me.
Yeah,
the little random eye movements, that's me, and it's remarkable. And I bring this sort of self-aggrandizing point up because. When we got the pages for the sort of callback in the prequel of those lines, I didn't
against it.
I was not sold on it.
Yeah,
I mean, my first day, I went up to Rod, who I was so happy to see after all those years, and I was like, Rod, I'm so damn proud of what we did on the first one. Are we going to fuck this up? I mean, I don't want to step on it. I don't want to step on it. I wanted to let it. And he was like, Ben, that's crazy, and it's going to be better. I promise you. And he was right.
Yeah.
Although better, I think of a piece. I think it's one piece. I think it's a part of a whole. But so then it was years later when those pages came and they were calling back to the scene from the first game, and I just thought,
it was remarkable storytelling. Like it was a callback that didn't feel fan servicey. That's something that often does irritate me and stuff. Is when it's like like bigger stuff. A lot of stuff in pop culture does that, where they put in a line, as I say, that you're like, oh, that's the thing from the thing, and you're like, but is that just to suck the fans in? That never felt like that. I felt like it was an honest callback as opposed to feeling like just thrown in there for something for people to gawp at.
I think that's a virtue of the writing. I think it's a virtue of the fact that we were afraid of it. And I think it's a virtue of the fact that I was able to trust. And so one of the things that'll happen with a scene like that, where there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of those army guys who are on that cliff. Is you'll layer in. This might be bad for me to say, but you can do multiple passes on the same take and add in more people.
Okay.
Right. So you're just layering, and so like I don't want to violate anything.
I was going to say, if there's anything you feel comfortable with saying, don't say it, or if you don't want to say it.
I'm skirting the edge of it, but I just bring it up because you don't often get to know so quickly. So we got the take that Rod was satisfied with.
Yeah.
And I got to hear it almost immediately. And finally, when I got to hear it, I was like, okay, I think we
nailed this. Yeah.
I think we skinned the cat. I think we got it. But it's funny because I think this is where you started with the question. I don't think it's that Dutch has.
Yeah.
And the way and again, my ideas are my ideas, but my sort of romance with the character of Dutch, I believe, and this is spoiler city.
Guys, if skip forward 5 minutes, but then again, like if you're watching this, I'd hope you've played the games.
Yeah, but if you haven't,
go forward.
I can do it. I can be kind of coy.
You're good. We've given them their notice. They're moved ahead.
Okay. Well, but the final scene of Dutch in the second game, in the prequel, where he shoots Micah.
Yes.
We had long debated who was going to get to shoot Micah, and I had long insisted it was going to be me.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note, just because I have my competition with John anyway, I think it's important to note that John may have shot him a lot, but he was dead with the one shot that Dutch gave him.
Yeah.
I think that Dutch came to hear about Micah's whereabouts the same way that Sadie came to hear about Micah's whereabouts. And I think that Dutch went there to ascertain if his fear that he'd been harboring for years was in fact the case, that Dutch had failed and Arthur had been right all along and Micah was the rat. And that's why Dutch is taking his time at the end. And he's waiting for absolute confirmation of his worst fear.
Yeah.
And that's why he's got nothing left to say. So he takes out Micah. But here's the thing that is then now when I think about, and again, my ideas are my ideas. It's not necessarily the truth of the character, and it may be that writers of the character and director of my performance would disagree. But in my mind, we know for a fact that Dutch Van Der Linde is a good enough shot that he can shoot a pair of binoculars out of a guy's hands.
Yeah.
An impossible shot. But that is borne out in the first, in the prequel, that Dutch is a marksman.
Yeah.
I believe. I don't know.
This is, guys, this is a disclaimer. This is solely Ben's opinion. We actually had a conversation about this on my stream last night, that one of the actors apparently from Life is Strange said that something was canon, and then everybody took it to mean it was canon. And I had one of the game designers on, and he was like, no, there is no canon. There is what the audience perceives it as.
I think that, but so part of me wants to believe, I'm putting as many sort of, but Dutch left that money on purpose. And Dutch, for all of his bluster about he's going to kill John, never does. And it was always odd to me how close to Beatrice Hope Dutch was. And part of me likes to think that Dutch, I can hear Rod in my head going, it's the stupidest thing. It's not true. It's not possible. But part of me wants to think that Dutch was keeping an eye out for Jack and John. And here, and that's as far as I'll go.
I quickly want to just chime in with just my own thoughts a little bit about that, which is just, again, this is great because it's now just becoming an opinion thing, which that's what we need. But like, I never, replaying Red Dead Redemption 1, even with, as I say, you meet Dutch and he's saying all kinds of horrific things, and he's the thing is, John is coming after him. I don't believe for 1 minute that if John didn't come after him, Dutch would ever do anything to John. Like, I feel like, yeah, as you say, I feel like he would have left him, look, you go get the life that you chased. That's fine. But, and even one thing I just want to very quickly touch on, because I saw this scene again today and it affected me, is that scene on the cliff, the change speech. The fact that John says, well, I guess I'm going to have to shoot you, and Dutch throws himself off. He spares John having to kill him, which that really hit me hard today when I kind of realized that.
We agree on that. We agree on that entirely. There's another point to it, and it's something that I would say all the time when I'm trying to find my way into Dutch's headspace, which is no one kills Dutch but Dutch.
Nice.
But it's very interesting. Yes, not only does he spare John that pain, he warns John to get out of here. That it's not going to end with me.
Yeah.
They're not going to be, the government is not going to be satisfied. They will not.
They're still.
If you keep playing their game, you're going to be, it's going to go. Dutch knew what was coming.
Yeah.
Dutch
he knew
what was coming.
That there was one more. What John didn't realize was that once he did the government's work, there was still one outlaw left. And the government wouldn't be happy until all the outlaws were dealt with. And one thing I'll say about Dutch as a character, though, as well, is what I love about Dutch as a character is a lot of the philosophies and ideals that he espouts in the second game are incredibly admirable philosophies. Now look, some of it doesn't necessarily land. Some of it is maybe idealistic, but a lot of what Dutch talks about is what a lot of us probably would love, and why the gang, I believe, follows him is not, as you say, out of fear, is not out of coercion. I believe the gang follows Dutch because what he talks about is what we all kind of long for, is like a place where we belong, where everybody's equal, where there is no, Dutch sells the American dream. He really does. He sells the American dream of you can have your own little spot. This will be yours. You own it. This is your life. And I will tell you that I do kind of feel like in the second game, the biggest tragedy or the biggest heartbreak for me was Dutch's arc, because I worshipped him. I was Arthur. I felt like Arthur and John had this ongoing competition almost of like, I'm more Dutch's boy. No, I'm more Dutch's boy. They were kind of like brothers, and Dutch was almost like a father figure is what I got. That was the vibe I got from their relationship. But when things started to go bad, like there's that moment, it's like when you're watching a good movie, or like I make horror movies, and when you're watching a good horror movie, you're like, don't do it, what are you doing, please? And like as it builds to that climax in Red Dead Redemption 2, you're just like, Dutch, no, please listen to, what are you doing, please? And it's just like, again, I don't believe anything Dutch really does, even though he does some despicable things across both games. I don't believe that anything he does comes from a place of like he's not an antagonist. I'd never consider Dutch the antagonist of these games. The Pinkertons are the antagonists.
Oh, without any question. Although they don't think themselves that either.
Exactly, yeah.
Justified. But I do think, I think that Dutch is motivated by something greater, and I think part of his unraveling, there's a lot of things that contribute to it, but part of it is the growing understanding that who does he want? What does he want to be? What's he trying to get to? Because is it what Angelo Bronte has? Because that's not what Dutch wants his life. He doesn't want to be a king and he doesn't want to work with the law and use the law. And so then what does he want to be? Catherine Braithwaite, a queen, who steals. Who is so unscrupulous as to take a child as part of a dispute? Does he want to be that? Does he want to be Fusar, off on an island, subjugating the people that live there? So I think Dutch keeps encountering these strong men occupying, and women occupying positions that are not unlike kind of where he thought he was headed. And none of them, they all are despicable in his eyes. Despicable. Yeah. He doesn't, he kills Bronte with malice, because of how offensive a person that would claim to be a law-abiding citizen and also a crime boss, and all of these things. You're going to call the law on me? I can get there. That scene, I love that scene. But call the law on me? Call him now.
The thing that makes him fascinating, I think, is that he is very strongly moralistic. Like, he is the head of an outlaw gang who has deep, and this is why he is a complex character. And in my opinion, and I can only speak again, right? This is only my opinion, but I believe that this is why. If you look back through any great art, like including literature, movies, everything like that. There's characters that live on because of like people can write essays and studies on them, and to me Dutch falls into that category. I'm not trying to fluff you up, I'm not trying to feed you a load of BS. I'm being genuine that like the storyteller in me looks at Dutch and goes, this guy's a fucking goldmine for discussion, for like, because as I say, he's not quite an anti-hero, he's not quite a hero, he's not the antagonist, he's anybody. He's anybody who ever had a dream that fell apart. I had a company in 2012 that was going places and it collapsed. It was worth €750,000. It collapsed and I got nothing out of it. And I empathize with Dutch. I look at him, anybody that's dreamed for something bigger and believed they were making the right choices for the people around them, and maybe they weren't, can identify with that character and like relate to him so much, which I think is everyone. Everyone's made those kind of mistakes, I think.
Sure. Yeah. But yeah. But I love that about him. And I will say, you know, it's tough for you to watch his decline, depicting his decline. Because, you know, I would have 6 months, 8 months where we're playing Dutch in his prime. And it's putting me in the best mood. I feel like, you know, I just feel like I can take on the world. And then you go and you spend 6 months playing him, you know, failing and flailing. And it was hard. It's painful to take a character that you love as much as I love that one. And because to play it, you can't play at it. You got to play it. And so you have to find the justification. You have to find it. You have to find the way to endorse that Arthur is not to be trusted.
Yeah,
he's not to be. And I can see, and Micah is right. I mean, Ben can see that, but Dutch, because of the forces that are on him. And, you know, and I expect that it wasn't just one thing that led to your enterprise unraveling. It was many forces from many directions seeming to conspire, and that's where Dutch is. And Dutch just keeps thinking he can scheme his way out.
It's just one step further and we'll be through it all and it'll be fine. It'll be smooth sailing from here on out. But even that adds to the relatability as well, the whole Micah thing, right? Because as you say, the player is going from the very first moment we see Peter Blomquist on screen, the player is going, that guy's so not to be trusted. He is sus. He is. But like, again, right, in reality, I've trusted people who have turned out to be awful. And I haven't found out till years later, and I've been like, Jesus, why did nobody tell me? And people are like, we did. We told you time and time again. This guy's an asshole. Stay away from him. Again, these are real traits. These are traits that people actually have. And again, Micah, right? I was very, very, very anti-Micah. I still kind of am. But Rob, I believe it was Rob Wiedoff said to me, but I think it was Rob, was it? That said, but if you look at it from Micah's perspective, or if you look at it, John does exactly what he always complained, or Arthur always complained Micah was doing. John sold out and is working for the government. Yes, he's doing it for his family, but that's still a selfish, while it is for his family, it's still a selfish reason. Whether it's money or his family, he's doing what he always said Micah was the worst ever for like doing. So I get that. There's so much complexity in this thing. It's like, this thing is like a fucking Shakespearean tragedy on acid, I swear to God. Like,
well, it is. It just occurred to me that I didn't square a circle that we were talking about earlier on, which was that scene on the cliff.
Yes.
Which is just that, when I look at that scene now, and I can tell you because I didn't know there was going to be a prequel, you were sort of saying, did Dutch just have all this stuff to say in his back pocket? And well, he certainly had many good saws sitting in his back pocket all the time. You know, he knows that's a guy that knows what to say. But to my mind, when he says, I got a plan, it's a good one, I choose to view it now that he's bringing Arthur's in his mind in that last scene. That is a great way of, I like you have never felt like this. I personally don't feel like they need to go back and retroactively add anything into the first game to make it connect more, because I feel like a lot of the characters might have guilt or guilty consciences about what they've, which is why they maybe don't bring up certain other characters. You know, I don't think Bill or Javier or Dutch maybe necessarily want to mention Arthur, because maybe there's a lot, and John, I reckon John definitely doesn't either. But like you say, reading into that moment now with a little bit of like thinking about it, it's like, hang on, they found me.
Shit, Dutch, get out of there. The Pinkertons are here. I mean, I did want to ask you a few other bits about other work, but I do feel like the one I really want to hone in on here a little bit is you and Rob. When I spoke to Rob Wiedoff, he told me that you knew each other before you met on the set of Red Dead 1. So my question, that you were working the door in a venue or something like to that effect, and he was barman.
Yeah, well, he started as bar back. I think he ended up as security, and then he ended up as bartender, and he was a bartender for a lot of years out here. It was a bar called Sky Bar, which I believe is still there. It was an institution, being the doorman at Sky Bar was like the big, like I was just, you don't get much better than that. And it was so funny to me that years later, I hadn't seen Rob in a couple of years, and I show up for this big gig. What the fuck are you doing here, man? And why are you, dressed in, oh, I'm working on this thing, man. It's amazing. It's great to see you.
That's such a good Rob. Well, I suppose when you've been around someone that long.
I could do Rob all right.
The question, though, I was going to ask is, like, because you had, like, known each other and everything, and I know in Red Dead 1 there wasn't a huge amount of interactions between Dutch and John, but, like, did kind of, like, having a history with Rob make that kind of interaction more natural for you, like?
I don't know for sure, but it certainly it didn't hurt. I mean, and it was easier to get personal, and we picking on him for his wife that we all had, it was fun. It was certainly fun. But how is it not? I mean, we're dressing up and playing cowboys. It's fun. It's just fun. But it is just one of those great sort of good fortunes in my life that on the other side of the game that there would be these convention appearances, and so so all these years later, I still remember on route to Kuwait for a convention. We had a layover in Istanbul, and we go to get a pint at an airport bar in Istanbul, and it's this guy that I've known since 2001, and here we are 20 years later. Who in a million years would think that would? So I don't see Rob nearly as often as I wish I did, but I'm delighted to call him a friend, and we certainly have a bond through this work, but also just through our time that is unlike a bond I have with anybody else.
I will quickly, again, I'm definitely going to skip over some stuff, but what I am going to say is, right, this is maybe leading into the closing, is we talk about your relationship with Rob. Obviously, one of the central relationships in this game, in Red Dead 2 in particular, is you and Arthur Morgan's relationship. And I'm going to very quickly say something, which is that I had worshipped Roger's work in the game I thought he was phenomenal. Obviously, everyone thought he was phenomenal. That's why he won like a bazillion awards. He's so good. But I then watched an interview because I was trying to stay away from a lot of interviews and stuff because I was like, I'm dreaming someday I'm going to interview these people and I'm going to talk to them. Like, this was at the start of all this. And then I watched an interview with Roger and I went, why does he have an Irish accent? Like, what? And then I went and looked it up and it was like, Roger Clark grew up in Dublin. I was like, woo, my brain exploded like at this. But what like, that's just an aside. But the thing is, like, you and Roger, I'd love to know, like, you know, what was that process like? Like, what was that bonding experience like?
I think Dublin's inaccurate. Born in Jersey.
Really?
Grew up in, for fuck's sake.
I'll fact check it. I'll do the fact check. That's what I'll do later.
I don't think it was Dublin. But that said, my relation, he's family. He's family.
Yeah.
We are, and we, you know, this was quite a road to walk together. And we're still, in a lot of ways, walking that road. But, the bulk of the scenes that I had to do, he was my scene partner for much of this work. And the level of trust that I developed with him as an artist was unique. And you know, and I think the work that he did speaks for itself. It's a tremendous achievement, and you don't get points for degree of difficulty, but to create such an indelible character that is also still somewhat up to the player to determine is a hell of a needle to have to thread, and he sure as shit threaded it. But I talk to Roger weekly, if not daily, sometimes. But he is, and will forever be a trusted and dear friend.
I love hearing this stuff. I really, really do. I will say that the fact checks are in, and you're completely correct. I was completely incorrect. It's actually Sligo, which shocks me.
That's exactly.
I mean, I love Sligo. I'm just shocked because, like, like Sligo is so rural. I love that. That's like where I live. I live in rural Ireland. Like,
now, Paddy, if he sees this and I had let that slide, I would never have heard the end.
I would probably have been shot dead. Like, so yeah, nobody in Ireland who's not from Dublin likes to be accused of being from Dublin. So I appreciate that. But like, I will say that, like, yeah, the thing is, just quickly because I mean, I don't want to get too off topic about stuff, but in video games, traditionally, you die and you respawn. You're Sonic and you lose your rings. You're Mario and you just get another life. What shocked me most about Red Dead Redemption 2, and I'm just going to quickly say again, if you haven't played it and I don't know why you're still here, jump forward 5 minutes. In Red Dead 2, Arthur Morgan gets a terminal illness, and in 2010, I had a scare with that myself. I had a scare where I had a tumor found, and I thought I was on borrowed time. It turned out it was a non-malignant tumor, and I'm here now, and I'm very grateful for every second that I get. But what I found was that resonated with me, like, hearing a video game character, as I say, there is no respawn, there is no losing your rings. Arthur Morgan is on borrowed time from that moment, no matter what way you play. It doesn't matter if you win, there is no victory. And yeah, I think that going back to your relationship, one of the scenes that I found so incredibly tough was just to watch Arthur knowing that he's coming to the end of his life and trying to do everything he can to sway his best friend in those camp scenes towards the end. And then when it all erupts with Molly, with everything, or with Penny. Yeah, no, Molly. God, Penny's the actress. No, yes. I just think that's the moment for me where you realize there's no going back from this moment. This is like effectively the moment that the thread has really, really, there's not really much thread left at that point. It's all kind of practically unraveled.
Yeah, I mean, I think and we put a lot of thought into the execution of the scene where Dutch leaves him for dead at Cornwall's kerosene and tar. It is, I mean, I cannot speak to anything about Arthur, but I can just say it was hard. It was definitely hard to do, particularly because we had, the bond that these guys had was so sincere, and then it sans Hosea, Dutch can't think straight because there's no one that's allowed to. Hosea was the guy that told them,
kept him in line. Yeah,
tone it down, man. You're not making any sense. And Hosea could say that. Arthur can't. And every time Arthur tried to get Dutch to see the light, it just proved to Dutch that Arthur wasn't on his side anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's just this, they just miss each other. And oddly, one of the first things that makes, at least in the narrative, one of the first things that makes Dutch think that Arthur's not trusting him is that Arthur keeps shitting on Micah.
Yeah. Again, I think we've all been through that with like a friend that everybody's like they're horrible, and you're like, then you start to go, no, you're just jealous of our friendship. Look, I'm not going to keep you any longer, Ben, but I want to thank you so much for your time. I feel like Kylie Vernoff said to me, when Ben talks, you talk, you listen, and I think she hit the nail on the head. I would gladly, in the future, when I'm out in LA for meetings and stuff, when this world is back to normal, we'll go grab a pint and I'll just sit there and listen to you regale stories all evening.
It would be a delight, Paddy. And listen, you've just been so kind and generous with so many people that mean the world to me. I just wanted to come and join you out of respect for the respect you've shown my compatriots, and so thanks for treating me so well, and I'm really happy to be here.
Anytime. This game is I think I've said it before, but this is my god tier gaming experience in my life. I would say, like, I pumped so much of my life into it. It was a post-shoot movie, as I call them, where like after a film shoot, I need something to unwind, and I got lost in this for 3 months solid, straight back to back. But what I'll quickly ask, Ben, is I know you are on Twitter, and you're on Instagram, I believe, as well. Do you have a Cameo? I
have a Cameo as well. Yeah, I'm on Cameo. I have to do a few of those. It's an odd and interesting way. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah. The love that people have bestowed on all of us for the work that we did on this extraordinary thing is overwhelming, and it has been my experience with fans of this game. That they are just magnificent, and the communities that they've created out of their shared love for the game. All of us are pretty aware of a lot of them. The beautiful art that's been created, and just this sort of the kindness that video game fans are not always known for their kindness. So that we have such an extraordinary group of people that have been touched by this work that we did, and that they all seem to be, it's about a lot of things, but one of the things that the Red Dead series is about is community. And it sure is the honor of my career that I get to play such a pivotal part in this community, at least play at such a pivotal part in this community.
And we're grateful to you for it. We're grateful to you for sharing that with the world. What I'll say quickly is that I will put links in the description to all those places where you can check Ben out. I strongly recommend sharing your love for the game, because the people that work on these things appreciate seeing your thoughts and feelings on him. Like that, comment here as well and let us know your experience with Dutch Van Der Linde, your journey with Dutch Van Der Linde, because again, I'm sure Ben would like to read those comments and see people's feelings on the character. And
I will do. I will indeed. Thanks so much, man.
No problem. Thank you. And just very, very quickly, I would say, guys, if you like the video here, please subscribe, please like, please stick around. We'll have more Outlaw sessions, I'm sure of it. There's still a lot of beautiful Outlaws that we got to get to. And yeah, guys, Ben, first of all, last of all, and first of all, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your performance. Thank you for everything you've done as an actor, as a creator. And yeah, you look after yourself. Survive. Let's survive together.
Let's survive indeed, Paddy. Let's thrive even.